Hey Blockheads, we've got a Patreon now. We would really appreciate your support to help us keep this podcast going. There's a link in the description below, so check it out. Now on to the episode. Hey, welcome to Creative Block. We're your hosts, Gene
and V. We interview people in the animation industry about their life, work, and hobbies while we doodle jam.
We asked people on Twitter if they had specific topics they wanted us to discuss, as well as some drawing prompts.
And today with us, we have Vivienne Medrano.
Hey!
Hey! AKA Vivzie Pop.
Aka Vivzie. You have many names.
Yes.
You make a lot of stuff. Creator of Hansen Hotel, creator of Hell of a Boss, creator of Zoophobia. Many stories, right?
Yes, I have an obscene amount of projects and things in my head at all times.
It's good. It's amazing.
Thank you.
So, for those who don't know, tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure thing. Yeah, so my name is Vivienne. I am the creator of a few adult animated projects, adult animated shows that I have so far self-produced and make just for YouTube for free. And they're all funded through the support of the amazing audience and all of that. And that's what I've been doing primarily. I've worked kind of in and out in the development world. So I basically, most of my work has been completely NDA, can never show. So the outlet has been to make these projects that I can just throw onto the internet and have people enjoy that come directly from me. So that's me.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. So were you going through like the traditional development pipeline before you started doing Hansen Hotel and Hell of a Boss?
Yes. Yeah. So my original start, besides, after art school, was just doing kind of one-off freelance. I've been a freelancer my whole career so far. I have not yet had any kind of cubicle or office. I have worked entirely offline with from various clients. So I have worked for some of the studios. I've worked minimally for Cartoon Network. I did something for Mattel. I did something I think I did something for technically DreamWorks. I've done some stuff for them, but very never will see the light of day. Kind of. Oh, and Warner. I've done some things.
Sure.
So
yeah.
I don't even know if it's safe to say what I've done because I don't even know if those shows have been greenlit. A lot of what I've done has been development for shows that may or may not be greenlit. So it's either something they're developing or it's something that someone is developing with them and they just need a creative partner to do the art side of things. So that was sort of not even my bread and butter because I was mostly just doing it when I, when it was a cool opportunity. I was like, oh, this seems fun and I have some time. I've since not really, I've kind of stopped because my full-time work is my own projects now. So there's not really,
that's amazing.
not really a need to do it anymore unless it's a cool thing.
Yeah, that's that's super great. And honestly, the dream of a lot of people who want to break into animation, honestly. And I was wondering kind of for you as a kid, did you know that you wanted to create your own stories and be an artist? Kind of how was that path for you growing up?
Oh, yes. My grandparents joke about it, especially my grandfather will joke about how many times I would make up my own stories and verbally spout them to them. And then I would quiz them on okay, do you remember what happened in this story? And so I apparently was storytelling from a very young age. And I remember, I'd always do little one-off comics and create characters and stuff. And I think it just kind of hit one day that I could make a character that was mine. And it was just the floodgates opened at that point. I mean,
oh, right. Yeah.
I've made hundreds of characters in my lifetime, some of which are not around anymore, some of which are. But sure. Yeah, I've kind of always been somebody that's wanted to tell my own stories and projects, and or just I gravitate towards other like IPs and projects that have that strong sense of character at the forefront and have like these really interesting casts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's like the earliest project you can think of that you did that you like really put hours into?
I would say definitely Zoophobia. Zoophobia, for anyone new to me, was my original webcomic. And basically, throughout my whole early life, like I think from... I don't think it was really started in elementary school. I think it was mostly middle school was when I kind of like came up with the name and stuck with it and started really developing the characters and figuring out what I wanted to do with it. And then high school was kind of like the really big time of like drawing my characters and being really influenced by things. And then college is when I actually created the comic and put it out. But that was kind of where all of my characters went into, was just this huge webcomic called Zoophobia that was about this this made up mystical land where it was completely run and created by animals and shape-shifting like mythical creatures. It was basically like a lost world of like just where animals and anthropomorphic characters and fantasy creatures could kind of like live and have their own utopia. And it was full of everything. Like when I created a character based on like mythology, I'd put it in there. When I created a character that was just just a regular animal character, I put it in there. I did like, it was too much. Like now looking back on it, I'm like, all these, like it had hell in it. It had all the, demons and all this stuff. And I've actually since then yanked characters out of that world and started to develop them as their own projects. And so some of the characters from Zoophobia are no longer in that world, and they're more like, I'm taking them out to be their own thing because there was just too much in one stew, I feel.
That's so funny.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, it was...
That's actually really great. It kind of reminds me almost of how they developed the Amazing World of Gumball. It was kind of like, here's a lot of characters in one like space, and then that's really great because you can just spend time with your characters and then like you said, like develop them in like their own stories. Because I'm sure like you've like every new character that you create an intense like character description, right? Like their backstory and everything about them.
Yeah, I would get really in depth, like with everyone, even like the characters that were really one off. And I kind of realized, I was like, oh, this character doesn't really have much going on. Why am I going this hard on them?
Yeah, but I think it fleshes out the world. I mean, I think people pick up on that stuff, and it it builds this rich world, and that's where you get. I think fans will often cling to somebody who maybe isn't even that important to you as a creator, but because you've put in the effort of like fleshing them out, they're like, that's me. It's like the classic like hashtag literally me, and that stuff's great because it gives more options for people to like be attached to the property, in general.
Yeah, no, definitely. I've seen people really like attach and fixate on some of the minor characters in various projects of mine, and I'm always like really happy that every character is loved in a way. I'm like, well, that's nice.
Yeah. It's always surprising, yeah.
Where did you, how did you make your webcomic at the time, and where did you post it, Zoophobia?
I made it, I use a program, I still use it a little bit because it's just it's like my comfort program, called Sigh. I think some people started out on it. Yeah, I feel like most people have graduated away from it. I still use it mostly because I don't draw enough to have graduated to something else. Like I mostly do like, in the actual creation of the projects I'm doing now, I do a lot of like revision and draw over and redline and stuff. And it's just an easy program to just pull things into for that. So I'm not really making big comics and stuff like that anymore like I used to. I just don't have the time. So, but it definitely served me well. I like the program. And so I would do the comic in that program. And then I posted it originally on a website, but then the more popular the comic got, the more I had to keep paying for more like bandwidth and it just got really, really frustrating. And I constantly like, I'd have so much going on that would be kind of hard to keep track of, and it would constantly be going down, and people would be complaining, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. So I actually moved it to Tumblr, where it's kind of died, unfortunately, because Tumblr then did that whole taking things down that they deemed like inappropriate, and the big purge. And even though none of the comic, exactly, and so even though none of the comic was pornographic at all.
Yeah. There was a lot of casualties that had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, a lot of pages got killed by it, so I don't think it's really readable anymore, which is a shame. I do have the pages somewhere. They're on some hard drive. I have like 80 hard drives, so on one of them I have all the pages. But I've kind of decided that comic, like I love it. I still love Zoophobia. I know a lot of people think that I don't like it anymore because I've obviously moved on, and I kind of always stare at the 10-minute short that we made as recent as last year, and I'm like, I totally hate it. But no, I do feel like it needs a reboot. It does need like a complete overhaul, which is why like we've kind of been wanting to do these little shorts here and there, which are a fun new way to like bring the characters out in a way that I kind of always wanted in animation, but kind of keep them as their own isolated thing. So the way we did that short, it was kind of meant to be like one of many potential, like just one-off little adventures with these characters that are like my childhood characters. So it's much lighter. It's much more like family. It's definitely going to become more family friendly. Like if I do revamp the comic, like I said, it was everything at once. So I originally was super edgy and adult and really like all of the things, all of the traumas the characters had, but now it's definitely gonna be more of like a young adult, like, fantasy like thing whenever it comes back. I'm definitely gearing it more towards, maybe not for kids, like not little. I don't think I make anything for little kids, but something that's much more palatable, not full of cursing and.
Well, that makes sense also because like you started working on this webcomic when you said middle school or you said elementary? You were really young.
I think it was very young. Middle school I think was probably the safest.
And now you're like, you've been writing for so long. So now you're like an accomplished writer. So now you can actually go back into it and be like, all right, like that was my learning experience. And now as like an accomplished writer, I can just kind of go back into it and make it an actual property.
Exactly. Yeah.
That is so great. And it's striking to me that you're very versed in writing. Like you were really, really, really intense about writing, but you managed to also draw this comic. Do you feel like drawing was just kind of a tool for you since the beginning to kind of just spread your ideas online and reach a community?
I think the drawing definitely came first, and the writing was something that I was always much more like. I'm a very vocal person, so I would love to like verbally tell my stories, and like I would love to like one of my favorite things to do, and I've done it many a time, is I'll keep somebody up until like 5 a.m. or 7 a.m, like just telling one story or like, explaining the lore of one of the projects or whatever. And I tend to do that more than writing things down, which I definitely should. But
writing's not as fun.
Yeah, it's not. I've definitely, I consider myself a writer now only because, and I think it's safe to kind of start talking about season 2 a little bit, but for season 2 of Helluva, I wrote, maybe I shouldn't say how many, but a lot. I wrote a lot of scripts, basically myself. And so I think it's safe to call myself a writer now because I literally have like in the double digits of scripts under my belt. However, I definitely do still think my strong suits are in, directing and kind of getting a look of a project and everything. Sure. But I definitely do think early on it was like the art was like, like the best way of illustrating these stories that I wanted to tell, because they were all full of characters that I really I was really in love with drawing, and I was really in love with thinking about. And so I think like more recently, the writing has been kind of more something that I've accepted that I can do or want to do. Because originally for Zoophobia, which I also do not recommend to any artists listening to this, I wrote it as I went. So I had the story in my head, but as far as the actual like dialogue and the writing, I wrote it in drawings. So basically I had a little notebook, and I would sketch out the layout of a page and thumb the characters, and then write the dialogue right then and there in the word bubbles. And I would do it as I went. I would do it page by page, which is why I feel
a lot of people do like that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good way to do it, but I do think scripts help, only like even for comics. Like a lot of the comic artists I know now use scripts first, which I do think is a good idea, because you can get more information across per page. Because like what I was noticing going back and reading the comic is I was like, wow, this 5 pages could probably have been told in like 2, but sure. Because of the way I wrote it, it's 5 pages. And it didn't help that the comic was so like ongoing. And so like 5 pages, I think I would post maybe twice a week or maybe once a week. And so when, you're getting that little information across each page, I think it kind of dragged on for people, including myself. Like I was kind of like, wow, this chapter is, 27 pages and I just don't have the energy for that. Such little happens.
Yeah. So. Webcomics are a weird beast, because it's like you have to update them regularly, and sometimes you just aren't feeling it, It's such a difficult thing to maintain. So it's like there's going to be chunks where it is kind of just spinning wheels, but like I think that there is still a drip of like, if it's not plot details, it's character details. And so like, there's always something new to be said. But yeah, because I've done a few myself, and looking back, it's like, wow, there was a lot of wasted time here of just because there needed to be an update, and it's like, I don't have the energy to figure this out right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, writing ahead of time definitely helps. But so what's the timeline between when you did Zoophobia to now? I mean, obviously it's a long timeline, but I think it's interesting to hear kind of how you got to self-producing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so Zoophobia was mostly college. So throughout college, I was doing it. And it's funny because in college is also where I created some of the characters that would then go on to be and has been. Like Angel Dust was the big one. I think I created him in like my last couple of years of college. Oh, okay. And he was kind of a comfort character for a while. Alistair I've had as far back as middle school. He's like one of my oldest characters. So it's very... it's very exciting that people love him now the way they do, because he's such an old school character for me. But yeah, the timeline was basically, so my college years were mostly Zoophobia. And as soon as I graduated, I had done my thesis film called Timber. And
where'd you go to school?
Oh yeah, I went to the School of Visual Arts, SVA, in New York City. And I absolutely fell in love with New York City. I miss it so much. I'm a big New Yorker at heart, I think. But I graduated, and as soon as I graduated, after doing that short film, which I had wanted to be a musical, and obviously back then I did not have the resources or the connections or any of the knowledge about how to like make that a reality. So what I ended up doing was I kind of went the opposite direction, where I challenged myself to animate something without any dialogue at all. So I was like, okay, Timber's going to be a musical that doesn't have any lyrics, and so
oh, okay. Yeah.
So it's basically this and it was scored by my friend Gooseworks, who has gone on to work with me on a bunch of projects, and who is incredibly talented. She's awesome. But basically, it had the score done directly to the visual, so it feels very very fitting, to what's going on. Like the musical cues kind of hit based on the animation. but that was kind of a challenge, like a personal challenge. Like I wanted to kind of be like, all right, what am I going to do without the lyrics and everything? And that was really fun, and that was my thesis. But as soon as I graduated, I was like, I want to do something now with lyrics really bad. And so I actually animated the song Die Young by Kesha for fun because I love that song. Ooh. Yeah, and that was kind of my first taste of YouTube, like anything, because I'd posted some of my thesis films on YouTube, but I hadn't really done a whole lot there. And because that video took off, I was like, hey, this is neat. And some of the big Newgrounds artists noticed me. Like my friend Mick, whose username is Rice Pirate. He first reached out to me and invited me to be on like a panel with other YouTube or not YouTube, like Newgrounds animators and stuff, which that panel is now infamous, so I won't talk about it. But it was it kind of was the shit show, but I remember it fondly because that was the first time I was invited around a bunch of other animators.
What was the panel's context? Was it just kind of like, oh, we're gonna go live on YouTube, or was it kind of like in a like a little festival kind of type of thing?
Yeah, it was a small con called Magfest. It's hosted in Maryland, where I'm from. So it was just this local thing to me, and it was an animation panel, but it was a little bit of a mess because I think like some people got drunk. It was just a mess. It became.
Doesn't everyone get drunk before a panel?
It definitely became but it was very drunk. Like
okay.
It was a mess, but it was very. In hindsight, I think it's very funny. Like I think I'm one of the few people that wasn't really angry. I was just kind of vibing, but I also do agree it was probably a mess. But I love all those guys still. So, it was a nice introduction to the world of indie animation.
It's like very rock and roll. It feels like.
I got thrown in with a bunch of other very unique animators who, like Newgrounds is kind of still the very indie space. That's where a lot of really amazing indie people still are, and definitely a plug for Newgrounds. Even though I've never really been to Newgrounds or myself, I love the platform. I think it's awesome. I think Tom Pope is a great guy. Scene. So big shout out to Newgrounds from me. Sure. But yeah, basically as soon as that whole thing happened and I got kind of introduced to this world of like, and some of my best friends I made in this space. So I was like, I finally felt accepted. I finally felt like I had a little community that was supportive. And so I pursued the YouTube end of things a little bit more because, again, this was during the time where just out of college I was doing freelance. I had a few experiences where people saw Die Young and they, it's the classic, oh, I'm a musician. I want a music video. And they would try to commission me for music videos. And I did actually do a few. One of them I was never paid for. It was a 4-minute music video. I did it in a month and a half, was not paid for it.
What?
Part of me.
How did you do?
Yeah.
What?
It
4
was
minutes in a month. That's really good. Like I don't know, for someone listening who's not familiar with the process of animating, that's really good.
Yeah. No, and well, to be fair, to achieve that, it was the most, the most cheated thing in the world. Like it was so. I made every like time save, every like effort save I could do. I would do. So it's very limited. I'm not proud of it at all, but it was one of those.
What it takes, though.
Yeah.
To finish something like that, it's just shortcuts.
I had to do it. Yeah, and then they didn't even pay me. So
no, that's probably good then that you didn't put that much effort into it.
No.
I kind of wanted to ask you to like if we can like kind of go back in time a little bit. Because that's something that's like really interesting for me is like in high school, how did you decide to go to SVA? How did you pick your college? If that makes sense.
That's a good question. I think at the time, because I'm from the East Coast, I grew up in Maryland, so obviously there's not a lot of animation around there. And I think I just looked into like the best schools for animation specifically. And two of the best ones were CalArts and SVA. Because I didn't really want to go to the South. Like, there's Savannah and
SCAD
and a bunch of stuff like that. And they were closer to me, but I also just didn't. I just was like, nah, I don't really want to go that way. I'd rather go to like the big cities. And I ended up doing a pre-college course at SVA, and I loved it. It was like the most fun thing in the world. I fell in love with the city. I fell in love with the school, and I was just like, this is it. So I didn't even bother applying to CalArts. I applied right to SVA.
Just felt good, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't. CalArts also, like, I don't know if they still have this rigorous application set up, but they
do,
had like ridiculously, it was like you had to have like 2 sketchbooks and an interview and all this stuff. And it kind of reminded me of Gablon because I've done the summer school there too. And obviously that school has a 100% employment record. Yeah, I did that.
That's where V went.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. That's a great school. I love it. It's really exciting.
You can say anything you want about Gablon. Like I have, with every school, we all have like our yays and nays.
Yeah. So. No, I genuinely had fun. Then again, I really like being like, I love travel and I love like being in a different place. So even though it was like 2 weeks, I really liked that program a lot. I would love to go back to Paris. It was very, very cool. But so no, I don't have anything bad to say about it. I just know their application process is intense because they have 100% employment record or something, so it's like really intense.
Gablon is like I kind of mentioned it in my episode, but it's like because it's similar to CalArts in terms of like the exam is like you have like multiple different exams to go through, and basically. And my gripe about the school is that, like, they get students that are already at the level of a professional, in my opinion. In my opinion, when I look back, I'm like, you guys could have just gotten a job. But, you do get, like, the school does kind of offer, like, a really strong network. And then you do learn, like, a bunch of stuff at school. But, yeah, it's kind of ridiculous, what's expected out of the students. But so you went to SVA, and what's kind of is there like any exams? Like what do they ask for you to submit in order to apply?
To apply, I think it was just your portfolio. I'm pretty sure it was just a portfolio and maybe like a cover letter kind, like a why I should go to the school. I think. It's hard to remember, but it was not nearly as rigorous. It was pretty straightforward. Nice. And yeah, it was great. I still think pretty fondly of SVA. I know I definitely have adopted more of the attitude though of art school is kind of just what you make it. It gives you the tools, it gives you the time to improve and to get better. It gives you access to experienced teachers, and it's also nice to be on your own. It's very, it's a good place to kind of find yourself. Definitely. And, just like college in general. However, it's obviously very expensive. So you only get out of it what you put it, you know what I mean? Like for me, like I really dove in and I wanted to improve, and I feel like it helped me in that sense. And and even as far as like connections and stuff, like I don't really keep up with the people I went to school with that much. I made most of my really good friends after leaving school, so I don't feel like, I think there is a stigma because I went in knowing a lot of people who are like, college is where I met the best people in my life, and it's just the best time. And I didn't really have that experience personally. And I think it's a good stigma to kind of break, is that like, you don't need to make your lifelong friends in college. You don't have to make your lifelong connections in college. You can easily just get what you need out of college and then go and bring that and apply that to like the industry once you try to join it. So that's one personal thing for me that I'm just like, don't feel like you need to be making the best connections and everything in college. Like you'll make them. Just I would focus on getting better, because that's what it's for.
Definitely.
And that's what the money is for. So I definitely think, it's just, that's the focus. Cause if, otherwise you can just learn everything online and make connections online and everything, you know what I mean? So I think, if you can't afford art school, there's definitely a way to make it, and to get good and everything. It takes a little bit more self-discipline because you have to find the time, you have to find the drive to get better, whereas in school you're kind of given that. So it's definitely a to each his own kind of situation, I feel, for art school.
100%. Yeah. Do you feel like SVA has taught you skills that are important for you as an indie producer and animator?
That's the one thing I will say. I do think SVA teaches you how to make a film by yourself, which I do really think is big. And they encouraged working with underclassmen and working with other people to kind of get your thesis done. And I think my first taste of having a quote unquote team independently was doing my thesis for Timber. I had people help me color, like flat color. And that was a huge help, obviously, because, it was such a long film. I think my film was 6 minutes. So, I would do all the inks and I would do all the animation, and then I just would pass them off to some underclassmen to color. And that was really nice. Like I liked it was the first taste of having a little team help me, and then getting to celebrate them at the end of it. I think I cooked them a salmon dish, and
that's great.
Thank you. Which I even did for the Has-Been premiere. I made the same salmon dish, and as many of the people who came.
That's a traditional dish now.
Yeah. It's good. It's my dad's recipe, so I'm I have to share it with everyone. It's so good.
Right.
That's nice.
Great. So that's been a part of you for a while. You like bringing people together to work on something, and that's kind of where the producer role seems to have come from for you.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely.
That's cool.
I've definitely found it's my calling is that, just I love it. It's great.
Yeah. It takes a unique set of skills, I think, beyond just being, creative or whatever, is just recognizing that you need the help and you need the, people to contribute, and it honestly, it usually makes the final product much better because you're pooling everyone's talent together. And so it's really admirable to be able to pull that off. It's not easy to get artists to come together on something usually.
Yeah, no, it
takes some hurdles.
Stealing a phrase from my friend Jaxie, she says it's like herding cats.
Yes, yes, it really is.
Amazing. I love that.
Just trying to get people to turn stuff in on time is always a feat in itself.
When did you start getting freelance gigs? Did you start kind of doing a little bit of freelance on the side when you were in college, or was that something that you were actively looking for after college? Or was it really all the Die Young video that you did that got you that start in freelancing?
It was kind of a mix of all three, because I did do a little bit in college. My animation professor put me on a writer that was working with him, or he didn't have time for, and he recommended me. So I did this little freelance pitch and that was my first experience being on a pitch to a network, because we pitched it to a network, and I was basically. Yeah, and it was basically just the art end of things, because again, that's been kind of my career. That was the first start of the career path of basically helping other people kind of facilitate an idea and get something out there, and that was really exciting. I liked doing that, and that was in college. And then out of college, I after doing Die Young is when I got contacted by these musicians who wanted really cheap music videos, which. I do regret in hindsight, because I think that's a lot of wasted energy, but it was part of the path. It was part of the journey. Yeah. But I think the development stuff didn't start. That started more when I got out to LA. I did get representation. I got a manager. Now I have agents as well, but back then, he would kind of find opportunities for me, and so I would do things here and there. and I was testing a little bit. But I tested, I think my first 2 years being out here in LA, I tested for boards. And I can see my decline, and not in decline in energy, because I started off like the first few tests I did, I like put my whole heart into. I worked so hard on them, and then didn't get the job. And then also it would be a situation where I would find out, because I had a lot of friends in the studios that I was testing for and everything, and I would find out, oh yeah, they that was just a formality. Like they didn't.
That shit sucks. Yeah.
What? It was like they already had their team picked out, and I was just like, really? Because I had spent a week and a half doing this 3.5 page test.
That's insane.
For a show.
That's something. Yeah, you learn once you get in the industry, you realize how often that happens, and it sucks. It's like
I do not like that.
It's so bad, and the fact that most tests aren't paid, it's just like, cool, they just wasted someone's time. It's just like it's not fair.
No, it's really not, because when for because testing is a tricky thing, because I do feel like it's a valid thing, because you need to see if somebody can do it, and I 100% get that. The problem though is like situations like that where you already have your team. Like if you're actively looking, then that's fair, and someone just doesn't make it, it's like, fine, that's fair. There's only so many available positions. However, though, like when you already have a team picked out and you're really just looking for like maybe 1 or 2 new people, and you test like 40, that's so unfair.
No,
so that was kind of what happened with the first few shows that I was testing for. And I think I kind of just got slowly more like I put so much effort into each one that I could tell, like, because I've looked back at like my tests over that year, and I'm like, the first few I put so much into. And then ever since then, they just got worse and worse and worse, to the point where I was like, I wasn't even trying. Like, I literally just banged this out like as fast as I could. And I could tell my heart wasn't in it. And nowadays, I don't even really board. Like, I've noticed that boards aren't really my forte. So I don't really even do it for myself anymore. So I've kind of learned that it's not really a path for me.
How, I was going to ask you, and you can give as little or many details as you want, but how did you go about getting a manager?
I need to remember how, because I've been asked by people like, how do you find a manager? And I kind of got lucky, because I forget how the meeting came about in the first place, but I had a meeting at 6 Point Harness here in LA with the development lead there, and I cannot remember her name at the time at the moment, but she was very nice, and that was when I first moved out to LA, and she asked me, do you have any rep? And I was like, no, actually I don't. And she was like, okay, I have I know some people, so maybe I'll pass your name along to them. And I was like, oh, that'd be amazing, thank you. And that was how it happened. Like my manager, Tony, I met through her. And he just was he was super supportive and very like, yeah, this is a cool, because that was before Has-Been was made. It was being made, but it was still in the, not really much to show stage.
Right.
And so I appreciate that he saw the potential in it and in me, and wanted to represent me. And so it's definitely like that. So that's why I'm like, I don't know, like the classic, I do think it wouldn't hurt to ask people, especially if you are pitching, it's like, do you know any, like, I don't think it hurts to be like, hey, I'm not represented. Like, do you know anyone who's looking or anything like that? But yeah,
that's super great. That's super great advice. Yeah. Cause that's something that's kind of like, I feel like in animation is like a lot, like people don't really talk about it. I feel like when you talk to writers, everyone has an agent. Everyone is like represented, yes. But like when you talk, or like actors too. But in animation, it's kind of, I feel like it's not a taboo, but almost. So I think that's so great that you were able to share your experience for our listeners. That is so cool. Of
course.
What kind of decided you to move to LA?
100% friends, because I technically can work from anywhere. But the years leading up to my move were some of the worst of my life. So after graduation, I went through a lot. There was a lot of stuff that happened in those few years. And so I met, like I said, I'd met a lot of amazing people in this very indie, Newgroundsy community. And I ended up connecting with some friends that were like, hey, I want to move to LA. And it was like, you want to go too? And they're like, yeah. And so we just made the jump because I wanted to live with them. And I wanted to be like, here was where a lot of my friends had moved to. So I just, I was very like, you know what? I think this is where I should be. I think it's time to leave the nest, leave home. Because I was living with my family, after graduating college. And it was very much a feeling of like being trapped. Like I love my family. I actually have a very, really great relationship with my family. And I love where I was, but I needed that independent. I needed to be away. And I needed to be in a place where I could actually go out with people and have fun. And because I only had 2 local friends in Maryland, and both of them had full-time jobs and were, had lives.
So you couldn't talk to them until 5 p.m. about your stories.
Exactly. Yeah. And they weren't the kinds of people that would tolerate that either. And they'd be like, oh sure. Neat.
Well, it helps to have a community. It helps to have people around you that inspire you, and like there's something to LA where you're in the middle of it, and I think it does end up being kind of like a big fish or a small fish in a big pond situation, because everyone's here, but you can work together with people, and you can foster that community, you can collaborate, you can do so. It's like it makes sense that you were drawn here. I think a lot of us were drawn here for a reason. It's not just that the industry is here, it's that there's people here, and that there's stuff happening here. It's easier to make things happen because everyone's in one spot.
Yeah, definitely.
So what kind of led to, you mentioned it a little bit before we were recording, but what led to you starting the self-producing of your projects and figuring that out?
That was very, I mean, it was very organic. Like I said, I'd had these very small instances of running a team with my thesis film, and then a little bit with Die Young. Got a very small taste of it. But yeah, I don't know, because I know Has Been was the first time I was running like a massive team of people doing multiple different jobs. And I'm very hands-on, so I was helping with almost everything. I did some animation, sure. I did some cleanup, I did some backgrounds. Like I did kind of like bits of everything on Has Been, on the pilot. But it was really, I think the initial kick was definitely that after graduating, I was trying to make a completely different film, and this is a story. This is definitely a story. So I was, after graduating, my initial aim, like I said, was to make a musical short. I really, really wanted to. So Die Young was my first taste of doing like something that I turned into a musical, because it was a song that already existed, and I kind of turned it into a musical scene. But I was like, I want to do something original really bad. And I had made some friends in my final year at SVA in like the Broadway world and in the voice acting world. And I really, really wanted to work with them on something, especially like, my dream was always to work with Broadway talent and make a very classic sounding musical short or film or something. So I set out to do that. And I actually met this guy that I will not name.
Yeah, don't.
But yeah, I won't name him. But he was, claimed to be a producer, and I was like, well, I need a producer for my short that I want to make. And then, long story short, I entered into an agreement with this guy's company in quotes. It was like him and another dude. And they did absolutely nothing. They took $20,000 from me and took it and ran basically over the course of a year. And that's a lot of money for a young artist,
yeah. That's a shitload of money.
That was all my savings.
Yeah, you were producing your own thing too. Oh my gosh.
And this was... And so that project got shelved. It's now back on the shelf for me, because I would love to make it someday, but it definitely, like, everything got just, my spirit just got broken, because I had never worked, and this is one of the things that I think is a valuable lesson, and it's why I'm starting to tell it more now, is that, what a production company is supposed to do is they're supposed to help you get the thing made. They're not really supposed to be asking upfront for monies or for like, you know, anything like that. And so they basically had me paying them monthly to do absolutely nothing for a year. And literally I was very confused by it because I was like, aren't you supposed to be like finding me cast or unionizing? The whole reason I needed them in the first place also was just to unionize the project because I had some SAG actors that I wanted to involve and some Broadway talent I wanted to involve. And obviously I had no idea how to how to get a project like SAG approved basicso and that's all they needed to do. Yeah, and they just completely scammed me, and so that was very much like a very low blow. I was already having a very, very rough couple of years, and that was kind of like a big really like completely wrecked my drive and like everything. I was just super like devastated because I was like all this money from all the support and all the freelance I've been doing was poured into a project that's basically dead now because there's I don't have any money for it. I don't have anything. So
just like thinking about it.
Like how did you get over just that feeling of just being like, you like being robbed and not only being robbed of your money, but on top of that, being robbed of your project and your time.
Yeah, it was a lot. Like, it was such a time sink, and it was such a, like, devastating blow, and just the realization of also feeling like a fool, you know? Because I was like, there were so many red flags, and I completely ignored them because I just wanted to. But, you know, again, like, when you don't know what a production company is supposed to do, when you don't know how to unionize something and you need that, like, when you're relying on someone who claims to have those skills and doesn't really... You know, like, so I'm trying to cut my young self some break, but the good news is that because of that, I went back to square one and I looked at what I wanted to do and I went, well, I still want to make an original thing. And I looked at these characters that I've had for a very long time and I really loved, and I was drawing them all the time, which was the has-been characters. And I went, you know what? Fuck it, like, this is what I'll do. I'll do these characters instead because I love them. I think they make for a fun show. I just want to make a fun comedy pilot with these characters in it because why not? And, you know, obviously that definitely worked out for me. so the way I see it is, you know, while that was a terrible thing that happened, I do, you know, like, I feel like it gave me the put, you know, because like I basically initially Has-Been was just out of spite. Like, it was like, fuck that company, I'll make my own thing and it's fine. I love these characters, and they were all comfort characters. So I was like, you know, these are characters I love. This is a project I've always wanted to do. And, you know, over the course of the 2 years making the pilot, I fell in love with this world. I was like, I put so much more work into like where the story is going to go. I became so much more proud of the characters and the narrative, and I felt like I just came into my own. So, you know, it worked out.
Like a phoenix, you rose from your ashes.
Yes, exactly.
It's funny how that always works. It's like you need that rock bottom before things go up, you know? It's like, I think everyone successful has definitely gone through some low fucking valleys, you know? It's like you can't have the high peaks without the valleys, and it's just like something to keep in mind. I think for anybody that's even starting out, it's like if you plan on being successful, you should expect there to be some bad times, because it's like you can't. And if you just like brace for it and you're ready for it and you have a good support system, like you'll get through it. Did you like what point was that? Were you in LA at that point?
No, this was all before LA. So this was in that dark, the dark time before moving out.
Made it even harder.
And yeah, so it was just a bad, because it was a bad year for personal reasons. It was a bad year for like, you know, world reasons. It was a very bad time for our country. It was just a bad time in general, and so it all was happening at once. But Has-Been means the world to me because it was the project that definitely pulled me not only out of a very, very dark place, but it also, you know, just it started my career. It started, and then I moved out to LA like really soon after writing the pilot. So we were like working on it, but it wasn't done yet. You know, it was very early stages when I moved out. But I was so vibing. Like I was just, everything was great. I didn't really need to worry about money at that point because I had done more saving and I had more support since then, so I had been able to save up a little bit more again and put all that money towards Has-Been and living in LA. But that was still when I was doing some freelance, but about halfway through, or maybe after like the second year of being in LA, I was able to cut freelance basically out entirely, nice. And just work full time on Has-Been, which is great.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you when you're telling that story of the first project, like you didn't have rep just yet, right? Like so yeah.
No, that was way before rep. That was before. That was before everything, because now, with rep, that would not have happened, I imagine. But
right, yeah, because they would have, protected you. Mm-hmm.
They would have been like, this company is a complete joke, and this isn't real, and absolutely not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
nice.
That's crazy. I'm just taking it all. That's such a difficult thing to navigate, and it's very impressive that you have come out the other side and done wonders, because that, I feel like for a lot of people that would have been the end of it. It would have been just oh, okay, just fuck it.
Yeah.
But so it takes a lot to push through it.
Yeah, I am somebody that I take things like that happening, and it just makes me dive in harder. I'm just I'll do it. So.
Yeah, I mean that's what it takes. You gotta just keep pushing. What is it? If you're going through hell, keep going, or whatever the old saying is. Mm-hmm. But that's crazy. And so what? I'd love to know what are some of your influences, because you have a very distinct look to all of your projects, and I'd love to know kind of what stuff are you kind of pulling from, what kind of stuff do you find the most inspiring, and things like that.
I'm definitely influenced by oh man, I it's funny, I have my favorite movies up on I have all my favorite movies, the movie posters up on my wall, so I can just look at them and go through it.
Great, yeah.
My favorite animated movie is Cats Don't Dance. I love that movie.
Oh, yeah.
So I was very influenced by Warner, the Warner style. The Looney Tunes especially are some of my favorite characters of all time. Mm-hmm. But what I liked about Cats Don't Dance was it took that very Warner style and that very cartoony, Looney Tunesy style, but put it in a story that not only is a musical, but it's an old school Hollywood musical, which I have a fondness for. And it's also a story about prejudice, and it's a story that applies to the real world, which I've always just loved, stories that kind of get into the real stuff. And then Roger Rabbit is another one of my favorite, which is another one that deals with prejudice and stuff through the lens of cartoon characters, and just has a darker tone and has a film noir tone. I love film noir, and I love that contrast. So those are very big influences for me as far as tone, and I've always loved, what I loved about Roger Rabbit was the clash of characters from completely different worlds. So I really like characters that are really diverse in that sense. One character is an animal, another one's a human, another, there's so much variety, and I've always loved that. And then as far as growing up influences, Invader Zim and Billy and Mandy were two of my top favorite shows as a kid, which the darker, the weirder, the edgier cartoons I've always loved. And then when I was a little older, I saw the show in full, but I've always loved the Batman Rogues Gallery. So the Batman animated series is one of my top favorites as well, because I love Bruce Timm's style. I think it was a big influence on me. I love how he draws women. It's very pretty. It's very appealing, and just how he draws characters in general, because I think there's a sharpness to each character design, but I've always really loved looking at it. And
simplicity,
yeah, and the Joker is my favorite character of all time. So the animated series one specifically is so good. So I definitely think a lot of my influences were on the more villainy, edgier sides of animation growing up, but then also Disney musicals, and because I'm a huge musical, a classic Broadway musical fan. So things like all the Renaissance Disney films where they adapted that, and they brought in Alan Menken and Howard Ashman, to make those memorable scenes and songs. Huge influence on me.
Yeah. What's your favorite Broadway musical?
Oh man. I feel like it changes all the time. I think my heart, my favorite is Annie because it holds a special place to me.
Okay. Yeah.
It was the only one I got to be a leading role in school. You know, like when I was a kid, I was in it and I loved it. It was a very exciting like time to be on the stage and performing. You know, even if I was a little kid and probably wasn't very good, but yeah, it was very nice. It was very like, so that one's special to me. It also has a great song, so I love that one. Realistically, though, I think like tonally, I think Little Shop of Horrors might be one of my top favorites. Okay. I really love that one. I think some of the more recent ones I've really fallen in love with. I've fallen in love with Dear Evan Hansen. I love Patrick and Paul, the songwriters for that. They're my favorites. In terms of songwriting, they're just so good at it. Like everything they make is magical to me. Like Greatest Showman became like my favorite movie because their songs are so phenomenal. It's good. Yeah, it's fun. It's good. I love it because I love just cheesy, whimsical movies. I love circus stuff. I love like their music. So it has this very like it's super feel good, very feel good movie for me.
I can see that. I gotta check it out.
Even if it's not. Yeah. But yeah, I there's a lot of good new musicals though. I've really fallen in love with things like Something Rotten is another really good one that I like to recommend to people because it's a really funny one that not a lot of people. It's really fun. It's about a funny tongue-in-cheek Renaissance story where it's about how Shakespeare is like a rock star in this one.
Wow!
It's about these two writers who are trying to be like, they're like the rivals of Shakespeare because he's like the big shot back in the Renaissance. And they're like, he sucks, man. Like he sucks. Like we're better than him. And so they end up going to like a future seer who finds out about musicals. It's like, oh, there's going to be these things in the future called musicals. And everyone's going to love them. And they're like, that's what cool. The heck is that? And so they try to make the first ever musical. And it's super fun.
Awesome.
It's like the goofiest. It's such a funny show. So I highly recommend it.
The costumes are nuts. I'm looking at it right now.
Oh yeah, it's really tongue in cheek. Like it's really fun. Yeah, I love that one.
I've never even heard of it. Yeah, the production seems really cool. Really well put together. Yeah, if I could make an influence map just based on like what I've seen of your work, it's like that is exactly what I would guess. And so it's that's awesome. That's a lot of stuff. That's a lot of like very different things, but it all comes together in like in a very appealing way. Cats Don't Dance rules, and I hadn't seen it until I was like an adult. Like I think it was probably like a couple years ago. Completely passed me by as a kid, as a teenager, everything. And man, I watched it recently, and I was like, holy shit! Why don't more people talk about this movie? Like it's so solid. It's such a solid animated movie.
It's so fun. It's such a fun movie. Like like you said, it's solid. It's just very appealing to look at. Has great songs, has great characters, has a great message. I love it. It's very
same
good.
Director as Emperor's New Groove, I think.
I feel like he was probably it's just like a zeitgeist kind of like thing where it's like probably wasn't the right time for like
it did not get promoted well.
It didn't get promoted.
It was happen. It came. I'm reading about it right now just to get my facts right. But it came out like while Warner Brothers was like merging. It was like the classic story of shitty corporate antics ruining the release of something, and it just like wasn't. It didn't get the love it needed at the time, but yeah, I mean, it's endured. I think it's like a cult movie basically because it's like not a huge Disney thing, but like a lot of people love it.
It's just like really sweet and fun, and the animation is so good. I don't know.
So good. It's just Darla's such a great villain. Such a little piece of shit.
Oh, she's so fun. She's so fun. Yeah.
I love what's the name of her bodyguard?
Max.
Yeah, the way that his mouth moves is such a specific thing, but it's so funny. It's so good. He's like like his skull doesn't move at all. It's just his lips.
I think One of my favorite shots is there's a part like when he first comes in, he makes like a just him-shaped hole in the wall.
Yes,
you know,
yes,
like you just see the hole first, and then when he leaves, he disappears through it like with like a flash of light, and it's just so funny. Like every time I watch it, he's just gone, and like there's like a frame of like a flash, and he's gone. He's just such this terrifying character.
He's a very strange character, but he's really appealing.
Yeah.
Before we dive into questions, because we got a ton of awesome questions.
Yes.
How do you deal with creative block when it hits you, and how does it look for you? How does it feel?
Oh man. Yeah, it hits a lot. I get very burnt out, because I don't know if this is probably everyone deals with it, but having ADHD, I think it like definitely amplifies it. But I will have times where I am so like on it, like everything, like I'm just flying through it. I'm getting all the nitty gritty done. I'm very focused and everything. But it only lasts for about 2 days, and then I'm incredibly burnt out for like a week. And so when I deal with it, I typically like I make myself lists. Like I'll have a little to-do list, and I kind of am trying to convince myself that if I do at least one of the things on the list, then I can let myself relax. It doesn't always happen though, because sometimes you can't even get to the one on the list. So I always get really down on myself when that happens. But to combat it, I try to like take a day to go, all right, well, you're not going to get anything done, and you're just getting anxious and upset, for no reason, and that's not helping. So that's when I try to like distract myself, like watch a movie or a TV show and trying to get some of that inspiration up. I don't really play video games, but I kind of wish I did, because I think that's a good time to do that, like just kind of get into something else, and take a day to kind of, reconfigure things. But I think it's safe to not pressure yourself and to do, you don't have to always get something done, especially if, you're just dealing with burnout. Which to me is, I think, what I call creative block is burnout, because I go so hot and then I completely fizzle out and have no energy left. But I try to just take it a day at a time. Like I try to go, okay, tomorrow, it's not happening today. Try it again tomorrow and we'll see what happens. But I definitely think like relaxing. I'm a big fan of treat yourself. So, if you're having a bad day, maybe order out, maybe, get the dessert that you want, or, something, watch the movie that you want to watch, do stuff like that. I recommend.
Especially after this last year, I feel like it's been real fucking challenging to try to like stay motivated and do things. Yeah, a lot of treating myself in this past year.
Yeah.
For better or worse, but you do what you got to do.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. I think that's really great advice, because I think it's easy to get stuck in that like loop, of like, I'm not doing anything. I feel like shit. I need to do something, but I'm not doing anything. I don't want to do anything. It's just like this it's like a feedback loop. It's very easy to get stuck in that. Mm-hmm. And it happens to everybody. I think that's important to note, is that I think no matter how people perceive artists online, it's like, wow, they do so much. And it's like, I think every single artist that seems to produce a lot probably has weeks, if not months, where they're just like, they just don't have it in them, and it's just, you got to keep going. Something that helps me, I'm going through it right now. I am in that feedback loop, and I'm trying to break out of it. Mm-hmm. But something that helps me is that I usually try to think about like, I feel like, it's like you feel like everyone's watching you and everyone's waiting for the next thing that you're going to make or whatever. And once you start getting followers, it feels like, oh, I got to like deliver. I got to blah, blah, blah. But then I think about like the people whose work I like and whose work I'm keeping up with. And it's not like I'm thinking about them every day. It's just like when they make a thing and you're like, wow, great. And then you move on to something else. And so to other people, you are a small part of their life. And that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. Like it's less pressure. Like,
wait, you mean you're not the center of the world of every single one of your followers?
I know. But I think a lot of people don't like. I've seen younger artists on Twitter that they're like, oh, I'm taking some time. It's like, sorry guys, I'm taking some time off Twitter. Like, or they come back and they're like, I'm so sorry that I wasn't posting. And it's like, that's okay. Nobody cares. Like, just live your life. Like, just enjoy your the days you have on this earth. Like, it's, you don't have to constantly check in. But it's tough because we get the algorithms trick us into feeling like we need constant output, and that's not humanly possible. Like, it's just not healthy.
Exactly.
But anyway, so yeah, we got tons of great questions. So from @DinoLich, did you ever consider a traditional path into the animation industry, or was producing independently always the goal?
Oh, well, I mean, in the beginning, absolutely. You know, I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna pitch a show and see, maybe it'll get made, and I'll test. You know, I was testing for boards because I've always wanted to be in a studio physically. You know, there's something about being with coworkers and actually, you know, there's a camaraderie and everything that I've yet to. Well, I don't want to say I've yet to feel, because I absolutely feel it now with my projects. But you know, like, I always yearned for that early on. I was like, I'm so excited to get a job at a studio and do all that, and you know, it just didn't really happen for me. It hasn't happened yet. No. And that's fine. Like, I think I've also kind of come to terms with, like, it's okay if it takes you time to get there. Cause I know especially after graduating, everyone's like, oh my gosh, like, I have to get a job now. I have to do it. And you know, like, freelance is always a thing. I think especially now this year, studios are starting to freelance people more because, you know, everyone's working remotely. So hopefully it'll become more of an easy thing for everyone. But I definitely had the original dream of being in a studio and getting a traditional job, but I've always wanted to make my own projects. So I think I always wanted to, like, kind of do it the traditional way of, like, getting in and making them that way. But when that didn't really happen, I just kept going. You know, like, I was like, well, you know, like, I'll do these freelance jobs for money and I will keep making my own things in the meantime. And I just got incredibly fortunate that people connected with the projects I was making, and I was able to kind of make that the full time. And now it's kind of the opposite, where I get opportunities for studios, but I don't really like the project, or I don't want to take away from what I'm already doing. And I've actually had to turn things down, which is surreal to me, that I'm like, I have to turn things down. But it's also, it's humbling. I'm very like, I'm humbled that now I'm wanted for things, but I'm also like, you know what though, like, I'm making these shows of my own, so I really want to give that the full focus, you know, especially unless something comes along that's just the right fit. And I'm like, you know what, because I'm very easy if it's something that I connect with and want to do. I'm very like, oh, I'll make time. Like, and maybe that's a problem because I already have a lot on the plate, but I'll make time. But yeah, I definitely originally wanted to go the more traditional route, but I kind of just stumbled into independently producing, and I've fallen in love with that now. So now I'm kind of now where I'm more like, the right project will bring me to something traditional, I guess.
Yeah. From @LaxHerverk. Been wondering what her connection with music is how good the songs in the episodes are. And I wanted to ask that earlier actually too, is like, do you have any musical education?
I do not. I have taken singing courses on and off my whole, well, not my whole life, but, you know, pretty early on. I think it was in high school I started, and in elementary school a little bit because I was in the musical and stuff. But I honestly, I can't take very much credit for the music and the projects because I have amazing songwriters who I work with. Perry Grip did the songs in the pilot of Has Been. In Helluva, we have a lot of songwriters. Sam Haft is the lead songwriter, and he's amazing. He's amazing, and he did like the amazing Stolas song that everyone is really connected with, the lullaby. And there are some absolute, I can't even remotely get over the songs that are coming up. I obviously can't say them or talk about them too much, but there are some phenomenal songs that would be on a Broadway album. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. So I'm very excited for some of the songs coming up, but they are all the magic of the songwriters, not really me. Like, I will help a little bit with lyrics here and there. I definitely know I have an ear for what I want. So it's hard to explain, sometimes like what you're wanting, but sometimes I'll give notes, but like, honestly, it's really just, it's their world. So I like to let them do it.
How do you pitch a song to your songwriter? Do you just tell them like, oh, this is kind of what needs to happen in this song? Or do you also, or are you like, oh, this is kind of like the song from this musical and a little bit like that song from this like pop album or whatever, and like, can you do something that is kind of in between? Or like, how do you communicate that?
It's kind of a mix. Yeah, it depends on the songwriter. So some songwriters are like, send me tons of ref, like what do you want the song to be like, and then I'll find examples and send them that way. But most of the time it's that I'll either get into a call with them or I'll type it all out, and I'll give them the script. So like basically as much context as they can have. And then I kind of go over what the song should be and like what it should convey. And then they kind of run with it. And that's usually where I step in afterward with the lyrics, where, like if it's not quite canon or if it's not quite like, correct in the lyrics, I'll tweak it there. But usually I just kind of upfront give them a big overview of the scene and what the emotions are of the characters at that point in the story are, and, like everything like that, to kind of inform it. But for the most part, they really just kind of let loose. And then if the lyrics aren't quite, matching what needs to be conveyed, I'll go in there.
I was going to ask you a question from at Kate Bailey M52. What are your top tips for pitching animated films? What is the most useful to have in a pitch?
Oh man, I haven't pitched a film yet, but pitching in general, oh man, I think it definitely, this has been said many a time, most likely by many a person, maybe even on this podcast, but the big advice I always get is that you're not so much pitching the project, you're pitching yourself, which is true.
Yeah.
There's an element of both.
Yeah.
I will say, I would argue that you are still pitching the show as well. But, you are, though, the sell and like what will help is whether or not they feel like you have the confidence and the energy in the project, if you have the faith in it. And then also just in general, like, if you're easy to get along with, if you make a good presentation. So I would definitely practice like, getting very familiar and very comfortable with your project. Like for me, I'm a big talker. So I had to kind of script out what I was going to say. But I would also kind of go off from the script and talk more naturally. But then it's like getting back on the script. I was like, okay, but I got to get back on before I trail off too much. But, like you can let yourself be yourself for the most part. And the main trick is just keeping it within the time frame that you have, But yeah, I think it's just about being really enthusiastic and understanding and passionate about your project, because the more passionate you are, the more it'll translate, the more like, if you're really excited about your project, then they can more easily get excited about your project. Whereas if you don't really have the energy, then it's like, they have no reason to have the energy,
Right. Yeah. 100%. Because they're going to be investing money in you. So they want you to, yeah.
Yeah, if I could add to that, there's a couple of things that I've learned, and it's like with pitching. And one of the things is like, it really helps to, when you're presenting, to literally spell out how you relate to it, and like, adding photos of family members. Like it's good to kind of show the heart of like where the project is. I mean, it's different for everything, but it's like the more you can kind of tie it into your own personal experience, I think that'll help, because it's like, oh, this is why they care about this. And it's not just like, but it's, different projects are different, but that's something that I've definitely seen in other pitch Bibles that is like, if you can like pull on the heartstrings a little bit, it'll leave a stronger impression. And like, I think that's the goal, is to just leave an impression on the people you're pitching to. And also, I forgot my other thought. But yeah, pitching is weird because you are selling yourself as much as you are your project. Let's see. From @SimplyLuna, what's the best and worst part of character design?
Oh man. I mean, I love character design. It's definitely like what I consider one of my fortes. However, for my own projects, I kind of let them be very self-indulgent. So the biggest challenge is making sure that I don't repeat myself too much, or if it's especially now that I have a team, is keeping the animators in mind, because I'm kind of a masochist in the sense that, especially when doing Die Young, that character had so much honor. The werewolf girl that I drew for that has so much honor, and I was willing to do all of it. But now I have to keep in mind that my team is the one doing it, and I have to be merciful to them. And I think it's challenging because I do feel like there are certain details that give the character that certain edge that makes them more appealing and makes them more stand out. Mm-hmm. But it's like figuring out which ones do add to the character and which ones don't. Like, for example, I think a pinstripe suit, like on character like Alistair, gives him more personality than without it. You know, like there's an element of like his look and his style that is informed by him having these pinstripes on him rather than having a regular suit. But, not every character maybe needs to have a pinstripe. You know what I mean? Like, not every character needs that extra flair on them to kind of inform them. So I think it's learning to like kind of peel that off of some of them. And the has-been characters are going through a little bit of a revamp to make them a little bit more animation friendly. And also just, there's a lot of ideas and stuff that I had for their designs kind of after the fact that I'm going back and kind of implementing. But yeah, character design is fun, but the challenge, I think, for animation, it's just bear in mind, what's animatable. And remember, you have to animate this character. You have to do so many hundreds of frames of this character. So trying to be mindful of that. And it's still something I'm working on because I like I said, I like doing really complicated characters in drawing. So so I have to kind of peel it back.
There's a reason a lot of shows tend to start to kind of look a little similar. I mean, there's all kinds of stupid biases about, CalArt style, whatever the hell. But I think a lot of it is people don't realize that like somebody has to animate this fucking thing, and like
yes,
it's very hard to animate a character a lot when there's like lots of detail, and so there's compromises to be made, and there's a lot of like figuring out what's the most important details, and like there's a shorthand that you kind of figure out as you go, and that makes it a little bit easier for the animators to draw it hundreds of times. There's always compromises.
I like this one that goes at Lucky Lemon Lime. What's the least enjoyable part about being a producer? It's worded in a very strong way, but I think there is something there in this question that goes something like what's difficult? Let's talk about like the challenges of being a producer. What does that look like?
Oh yeah. A lot of things. I mean, right now, the way Helva is going is that I and a handful of leads we're managing a lot, because the pipeline of a production is massive. And normally there are department heads and there's people whose like job is each step. Whereas as of right now, it's like all me and a handful of other people. Like we have an animation lead, an animation supervisor, background lead, prop lead, and FX lead and stuff. But basically between all of us, we just run everything. And the team is huge. Like we have an enormous team of people, because that's the only way we can make it the way we do, is because the episodes are so long and it's so complicated that everyone gets I basically ask every animator what they're comfortable doing within a month, and they give it to me and they let me know. And I allocate things based on that. So everyone kind of has like this very catered workload. And then if there is an issue with deadline or something comes up or anyone needs passing, it's our job then to like relocate where things are and keep track of it all. It's a lot. So I would say, I mean, the challenges are all of it. For me, I'm only one person. I've like missed getting back to somebody like right away. I've like, sometimes basically our entire production is done over Discord. So sometimes people message me about something and I'll miss it or I'll read it and then the notification goes away and I accidentally don't go back to it. And so, so some of the challenges are just being one person with over 100 people at this point who are working on the show in some capacity and, having to basically wrangle all of that and everything. And it's definitely not something I think everyone can do. I don't know who I inherited it from. I have my mom is definitely somebody I think who I maybe have gotten it from because she's had multiple businesses at once. And my dad came over as an immigrant, so he's always been a hard worker. So I definitely think I inherited, thankfully, my parents' tenacious work ethic. However, it's definitely a lot, and I do wish it was. There's times where I'm like, I'm very thankful to the leads who are helping and keeping me sane. Because if it was me doing everything, it would be probably impossible. But
impossible.
I think that's definitely the challenge of producing like independently is that you have to do all the jobs. You have to do all of that overhead and that nitty gritty. That at a studio, there would be multiple levels of people working and doing there's somebody who's in charge of the editing. There's somebody who's in charge of the payroll. There's somebody who's in charge of the boards and directing. And it's like, I'm all of it. So I think that's the biggest challenge.
Yeah.
This is more for me as a follow-up, but like, what does your day-to-day look like usually? Like, what do you spend the most time on?
It's different every day. Basically, every day I have a whole laundry list of things to do. But the best part is checking in on the progress of the team, getting to see, and it's always a surprise because we have deadlines. But, when people actually submit their shots and everything differs every time. So, I'll be like pleasantly surprised to see like one of my favorite shots that I was really excited to see will be like posted. The animator will be like, here's my rough. And I'm like, squealing at how good it looks. And, I'm like, that's always like the nice part is like doing, reviews and notes for shots coming in. I also do key drawers as well. Like when people are having a little bit of trouble with the style or the model, instead of like going, do it again, what I do to save time and effort is I full stop, I'm like, hey, do you want to screen cap me those or send me the file and I'll correct it. And then I send it back so that it's their drawing, but it's just on, if there's anything off model or we wanted to push an expression or something. So I just kind of do it so that they can pull that back in and just finish the shot. So I'm doing that as well. So I do drawers pretty regularly, like if any are needed. I check in with the leads. I basically just every day is just a review of everything. We're also doing simultaneously, we're doing boards as well for season 2. So, I'm looking at that and doing board meetings with the board artists and stuff like that. So we're just so much, so much at once. And that's not even counting, if I do have any meetings and stuff kind of more in the general day to day, like if I'm having meetings with studios or talking with them with more of like the industry side of things. So
do you like have set work hours for yourself or is it just kind of whatever time it takes?
It's constant for me. For me, I do not know how to stop working. So even when I'm like, yeah, I'll stop working at this time. No, I go late into the night and then I would go to bed and I start it all over again. So wow. I don't entirely recommend that, but it's just who I am. Like, it's just how I am. I love to work. So
yeah.
But I think that's why when I do get burnout, I try not to beat myself up. And I'm trying to like, hey, all right, I'm just going to let myself take the day easy.
Well, if it's fun for you, it's kind of hard to draw the line sometimes with work because it's like, if you're enjoying it, what more is there? It's like you're spending your time on the stuff you care about. So
I think with the pandemic, and with the pandemic, things are so like you can't go anywhere and do anything. So I was like, you know what? Guess I'll just work even more.
Yeah. It's a curse and a blessing in a lot of ways because it's like you have all the time in the world, but then you got to fill the time.
Exactly.
And that's the hardest part. We've had a few people asking questions about like, how did you get some of this like high profile voice acting talent, like Norman Reedus, like Alex Brightman, I think a lot of people want to know that.
Oh, totally. So every actor is different. I originally, I'll talk about Helva specifically because I think Helva is where we've had some of the bigger name, quote unquote, bigger name talent. I only say quote unquote because, you know, I love every single member of the team, of the cast of all projects. So, you know, but
sure.
Helva is SAG, so we have access to a lot more, you know, SAG actors, just inherently. So they, you know, like the qualifies for that. Basically, like originally with Helva, I met with Brandon, who was the main character's voice, and he's amazing. And he was kind of the first bigger name actor that I kind of like got involved with, and he's awesome. Like, and he helped write the show, and he's been great to work with. And through that, it kind of just became like I know a lot of people in the voice acting world, and I kind of just reached out to certain people that I'd always wanted to work with. And one of those being Richard Horvitz, who is amazing. And he's actually now the voice director for the show and everything. And he's amazing to work with. But I met him, or I got his contact initially through my friend Adam or Maxwell Adams, who obviously they go way back. And so like initially it was just kind of like meeting people, you know, and just having the connect and pitching them the project and them being interested in it. And from there, I always wanted to have, or at least try to have some of these amazing Broadway actors involved in any project, really. I was just like, I have a lot of characters that I make specifically with a voice in mind, or I have a voice in mind when I'm drawing them or designing them. And when it came to Helva, it really just became a situation of why not? Like, I literally was like, you know what? The worst they can say is no. Like, why not try? Why not ask them? And we were casting for season 1 right during the pandemic. And it was also a time where, like, heartbreakingly, Broadway went dark. Like, it closed for most of the year and still closed now. And it was so devastating to see. And so a lot of these amazing actors, like, were completely out of work. And I was like, well, if there's any time to like try and involve them and get them something to do, it's now. So a lot of the cast in Helva is Broadway. And it's an honor for me because I'm a huge musical theater like nerd fan, and I've gotten to work with some of my favorite voices in Broadway and these amazing talents. So it's been an honor, an absolute honor to work with every single one of them. But I do think that the pandemic was probably like what made their availability, you know, more doable. So this kind of project, even though it was an indie cartoon show that they probably never heard of, it was more, you know, doable, I think, because of availability. But now I feel like a lot of them have really seen how like the show resonates with people, and it's been very like uplifting to see the cast really like embrace these characters, and it's an honor for me to see how excited they're getting about like where the stories are going and everything like that. So that's been great. But that's definitely for the more like the Broadway end of things. When it comes to some of the people like Norman actually was somebody that I met with on a general for a completely unrelated reason. He has a production company, and I meet with a lot of production companies for various projects of mine. And I met with his just as a general. And what was amazing about it was I really liked that it was him there, because I've met with a lot of production companies that are owned by actors, and it's not always them, you know, and which is fair because, you know, they're busy, but it was really cool that he was there, and we just hit it off. He was incredibly nice person, and incredibly fun to talk to and very easy to talk to. So it really just came down to me asking him, because we were doing all the boards and everything for the episode, and I didn't really have anyone specifically in mind, but I knew I wanted a really cool cowboy villainy, you know, like a really unique, like fun villain voice. And I was like, you know what? I wonder if he'd be interested. And so I literally just pitched it to him. I was like, hey, you know, we have this this villain cowboy demon guy. Is that what do you think that would be? You'd be interested at all? And I was like, there's also a song, but and he was super down. Like I think the song was exciting for him to do because I think he'd never done something like that. And so he just like, yeah, this sounds fun. And I was like, cool. And that's literally how it happened. Like, it wasn't any kind of like big, like try. Yeah. It was just, I literally just took the risk and asked, and he's a really, really nice guy. And he just was like, yeah, sure.
Know. You just gotta ask.
Like,
yeah.
It's very, very big mantra of mine is why not? It's a big why not. Because, like, again, the worst thing, and we've had people say no, nicely, people have turned down roles, but I'm never offended because it's always like why not? They're busy. They've got a lot on their plate. I don't blame them for not having the time to do something like this, but the people who have, it's been an honor, and I'm thrilled by the cast. But, even if they get busy and everything, like it's not, no hard feelings. I just appreciate that everyone was a part of it at all.
Definitely.
So. Yeah, that's really cool. That's very inspiring. I love that attitude of just been like, what's the worst that can happen? Just to know.
Yeah.
Just get a no.
Exactly.
And you move on.
You get a no, and you have to move on and find someone else who will also rock the role. You know what I mean? Like, everyone, there's always amazing people out there to do these characters. It's just, if you have a voice in mind and you wanna try for them, the worst they can say is no, or not get a response, and then you have to move on anyway. Like, it's just, why not? Why not try?
Yeah. V, was there any other questions that were interesting to you?
I think we kind of went over a bunch of really good ones.
So what kind of goals do you have for the future? Like, what do you have in mind?
Oh, man. I mean, I definitely want to, like, my biggest dream, my biggest aim is definitely to make Has Been and Helluva in full. Both of the shows have stories that I have just fallen in love with and characters that I fall in love with. So, and they have a narrative and they have an ending. Both shows I actually have completely mapped out, and I know exactly where they end. And it's a journey to get there. It's multiple seasons for both shows. And so obviously now is like just a goal of, all right, let's try and do it. Let's try and get to that finish line. So that's a big one for me, is that both these shows are definitely babies to me. But after that, like, I honestly have a lot of other projects that I'd love to do. Like, I have another couple babies that I'd love to make, like Timber being one of them is a big one I'd love to do. And that's more of a family friendly show. And I have a few other projects that I'm incubating right now. And I've always dreamed of being involved in a feature, if not doing a feature, but like just being involved in a feature film. So that's also on my list, is like maybe to try to develop something or pitch something that's in that space. But basically I would just love to, I want to finish these stories and see where other projects take me, basically. Just going through it.
I think it's a great goal.
Yeah.
And you've proven that you have the skills to execute on all these things. So I have no doubt that you'll stick the landing on all of those.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, that's the end of this creative block. Thanks to Vivzie for being our guest and sharing her story.
And thanks to your listeners. Follow us on Twitter. It's at Creative Block, creative without the vowels, where we ask for drawing prompts and questions to ask our guests. Huge thanks to my sister Clemens for editing the podcast.
Please subscribe to the channel if you love our content. I've been your host, Gene.
And I was V. Keep being creative, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.